to define, and I can't totally redefine them in my community, right? So the question is, how much do you want to struggle against that? And that is an interesting conversation. Go ahead.
The reason I'm saying you're obfuscating is that I don't believe that you possibly could have thought I meant anything else last night. You don't think I meant that you have total control, and you don't think that I thought you meant you have zero control.
The problem is that when I would bring up an example, and when I would say, these words are used so far, they have so many different meanings now, I don't want to struggle against all of those other external meanings. I don't want to sit here and have to redefine or try to define Nazi, rapist, homophobe, whatever, in my own stream. You would always say, well, are you saying you have no control over the words? Are you saying that the community is outside of your control? You can't guide them at all?
I knew you weren't saying that.
Okay, well, that's what it felt like to me as an emotional retard creature. That was what I was hearing over and over and over again.
I don't think you're...
Correct. You didn't say I was hurt. You said worse. You assumed that I was being malicious. So it's even worse than being dumb. You assumed that I was being intentionally bad faith by saying gaslighting and evasiveness.
I'm going to settle on semi-intentional.
Okay.
But my sense is now that if you really wanted us to have a shared understanding of what I mean when I say you have control over how your community uses the word Nazi or how they think of the word Nazi, I think that you would offer back a good faith interpretation of that statement. You would say, okay, so you're saying I generally have a lot of influence over how people use the word Nazi in my community. Got it. And I would say, sure. Like, I'd be pretty amenable to that. Like, do you really think I'm going to counter that with saying, no, Stephen. I'm saying you have total 100% control over how
I do think you would try to nail me down that, because the issue that I'm having, and this is why I was writing down and trying...
insane.
You're saying that, but I think it's insane of you. You don't know... I need you to admit this. You don't know if Nick is a Nazi inside of his mind. You can't know that. It's that information is by definition inaccessible to you. You don't know that, right? But when you're trying to nail down on me, like, do you think he would do this? Do you think he's nice? It's like, fuck, man, I don't know. Mate, what about in his ideal world? I don't know what his ideal world would. Maybe you're accusing me of being weaselly every time I refuse to stake out a hard position here. So when you say, like, can you redefine a word? Can you do this? Like, I don't know if you're asking for a one.
That's not why.
I don't. Hold on.
That's not.
I'm just saying that from my perspective, you're trying to nail me down on these ultra rigid positions where it's like, Jesus, I don't even fucking know. Like, if he was in power, if he could get the power, what he would do. I'm not sure 100%. So when I'm not taking these 100% positions, it feels like you're attacking me for it. So I don't know what you mean when you're asking me to, like, redefine words or fight for words, or you're giving me examples of how I can, like, change some words, whatever. That's what I'm trying to figure out by writing your responses down and then ask you questions to test it.
Okay. I disagree with your statement that I'm calling you weaselly for not taking a firm stance. That's not why I don't even call you weaselly, but that's not why I'm accusing you of obfuscating.
Sure, you called me cowardly, spineless, and says I wasn't equipped for the conversation, and that I was gaslighting. I think those are the words you used, but not weaselly. Go ahead.
I think I called all streamers cowardly and spineless.
It was in the context of that conversation related to these topics, so it was very specifically aimed at me. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, are you saying you're mad or hurt that I used those terms, or are you asking me to defend my stance?
No, I'm not mad or hurt. I'm frustrated because once these words are brought out, the argument ends. We can't have a back and forth anymore because now you're telling me what I think and you're not listening to what I'm saying because you've already decided, oh, he's lying about this, he's being bad faith.
But the implication of that is that you never obfuscate, but maybe you do.
The problem is we're having an incredibly complicated conversation about incredibly broad political labels that I believe 90% of people could not accurately identify today. And you're saying, oh, you're not giving a rigid definition of this, you're obfuscating. I'm not obfuscating. I'm just acknowledging the hardcore political realities that we live in today.
That's not why I'm saying you're obfuscating.
Why are you saying I'm obfuscating? Okay, I'm sorry, hold on. I'm writing this down, word for word.
Okay.
Why am I obfuscating?
I think you are straw manning me with a completely untenable position by saying that if I say you have control over how your community defines this word, I must be saying you have 100% control over how your community uses the word.
Okay.
I also
so this is what it... Well, hold on. Okay? So you think I'm straw manning you with an untenable position by saying that if you're claiming that I have control over how my community defines a word, you must be saying that I have 100% control over community defines a word. So in my mind, I feel like we're fighting about the interesting conversation, which is a struggle of how much effort should I put into this versus not? So I feel like I'm giving an example where I'm saying, well, there's a lot of external ways that these words are defined as well that are out of my control. And then your response is, no, you can control it in your community. When you say that as a response, so there's two responses. You can either say that, no, you can control it in your community. That makes it sound like a binary position. But if you were to respond to me instead and you were to say, well, yeah, there is a lot of external content there that you can't deal with, but like, I think it's worth it for you to fight against that in your community, even if it's not a 100% thing, to try to like maintain some like level of, and you're gonna have to fight for it all the time, of this word's definition of community. Like a response like that would be like, okay, well, let's talk about how much we should fight for the definition. But that's not what it felt like when I was pushing back for these are why I don't fight 100% on these things. It sounds like you were always giving me a counter. It's like, oh, so you're saying this, or oh, well, you don't think that. Or whatever. Well, no, that made it felt like it was binary from you. That's the feeling.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we both know that I would never say I have no control and I have total control. Both of those things are false. We both know that both of us, I would hope in this conversation, think both of those statements are false, right?
It feels like a derailment when you even introduce either of those concepts, because neither you're not going to say you have zero control, and I'm not going to say you have total control. So, and this is the same thing with whether Nick is a Nazi. It's the same. I feel like it's the same obfuscation. What I'm asking you is, what is your personal assessment? Is he a Nazi? Is he not a Nazi? Or do you not know? But when I press you on that at different times, I get different answers. That feels like the obfuscation. If you just said, I don't know, and I don't care, then I'm not going to say you're obfuscating then. I'm not trying to reach into your mind and say that like you're contradicting your inner thoughts. I'm saying the things you are saying are contradicting other things you're saying, and then you're positioning me as being unhappy that you don't know the answer to my question or that you won't take a firm stance. My problem is that you are taking multiple contradictory yet also kind of firm stances and introducing confusion. I think the confusion serves to give you a defense of how you're handling Fuentes, but it also serves as a defense of him. And I think that by saying that I'm unhappy that you don't have a firm, that you can't read his mind, like that's such a crazy straw man. No, I'm not saying you should read his mind or that reading minds is possible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying based on all the information you have about him, I think it's kind of important for you to make an assessment of whether or not he's like a genocidal crazy person who wants to kill people if he comes to power, or to whatever extent you think that is true. I do think you need to assess that.
Okay, here's what's happening, okay?
Okay, all right.
You're saying, is he a Nazi? And I'm saying, I'm not sure. And you're pointing out, well, you said he was a Nazi here. You said he was a Nazi here. Here you joke that he's a Nazi. Here you allude to him being a Nazi. Here you say he's not a Nazi, and right now you won't call him a Nazi. And you're saying that I'm obfuscating by not answering the question. Is that a fair summary of what you're saying?
Yes, but I just want to again be clear that my problem is that all those statements contradict each other, not your current answer or your current thinking.
Sure. Okay. And my assertion is none of those statements are contradictory. But the problem is we're fighting over the statement, is he a Nazi? And you think that the question you're asking me is Nick Fuentes a Nazi? That's not the question that I'm dealing with. The question I'm dealing with is, what is a Nazi? That's the question. Insofar as a Nazi is a strictly defined term, I can clearly compare it to Nick's stated positions and figure out whether or not he is or is not a Nazi. So for instance, if we go by the definition of he was part of the National Socialist Party, he's not a Nazi. If we go by the definition of has some vague anti-Semitic beliefs and is fascist, he might be a Nazi or is a Nazi. If we go by this or that...
Do you think his anti-Semitic beliefs are vague?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because he doesn't currently advocate for genocide or ethno-states. He doesn't currently advocate for, well, it depends now on how we define anti-Semitic, I guess. Anti-Semitic in reference to Nazi, or anti-Semitic in terms of like, just doesn't like Jewish people?
Whatever you meant when you used the word.
Well, if you don't know, hold on.
Definition.
If you don't know what I meant when I used the word, then for you to say, well, don't you think he is that, when you don't even know what I mean when I say that, I'm not saying disingenuous intention on your part, but you're asking me an empty question. You don't actually even know what I'm saying. at that point.
One of us is being disingenuous when that exchange happens. I agree, and we both
no.
think it's the other.
I don't think we're both being disingenuous. I think that we both
think
have in
it's
our mind an
disingenuous.
understanding of what anti-Semitic means. That's the whole point of this
think you're-
conversation.
I think you're being disingenuous when you say he has vague anti-Semitic beliefs.
Do you
I
agree?
believe that you have I believe that you have a definition of anti-Semitic, and you have a definition of specific, and I believe that Fuentes' beliefs meet both of those criteria.
Okay. Do you believe that different opinions of what could be anti-Semitism exist?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then if that's the case, when I ask, or when you ask, is Nick Fuentes anti-Semitic, we have to define that. If I just say yes or no, we could be both talking about different things, right?
We could, but I trust you to have a pretty reasonable definition of anti-Semitic. I think
No, not when we're literally debating the meanings of these words. These are the beetle in the
we're not.
boxes. You don't know what anti-Semitic means when I say it.
Okay, I think that's an obfuscation to say that that's what we're doing.
Okay, here's a question. Is somebody that makes an anti-Semitic joke an anti-Semite?
No.
Okay, is somebody that thinks that Jewish people have a disproportionate outlay of control of media or entertainment in the United States anti-Semitic?
It depends how much time they spend thinking about that, but if just thinking that, no.
Okay. Is somebody that believes that Israel has an unfair treatment of Palestinians anti-Semitic?
No.
Is somebody that is anti-Zionist, so they don't support like the nation of Israel, or they believe that Israelis engage in apartheid against Palestinians, are they anti-Semitic?
No.
Is somebody that wants to curb the influence, the disproportionate influence that Jewish people have over media, are those people anti-Semitic?
Starting to get there, yeah.
Okay, starting at that. So I think that the anti-Semitism that I've seen. Okay, one final question: is somebody that makes anti-Semitic jokes an anti-Semite?
I think it depends on the context or how
Sure.
often. At some point, if you keep making anti-Semitic jokes, at some point I'm going to start thinking of you as hating Jews. Yeah.
Sure. So,
but I don't agree that this is the conversation. Like,
well, hold on, no.
this
This
whole
is
line.
this is the conversation. You don't want to have.
I don't agree.
I know.
We
You're wrong,
disagree about
but
what
you're
the
wrong.
conversation is?
This is
Okay,
the
no, no,
conversation.
okay.
This,
Okay, I
because
just
you're
need to-
saying
I
you're
just
asking
need to
me.
make this
is
clear that
somebody,
I don't-
That's
I
fine
don't
that you
think
think
what
that.
you're doing-
You're asking me is
Okay,
somebody
okay.
X, and I'm telling you we need to define X, and now we're walking through now, and
don't-
you can see how complicated it is to define X.
I don't think I don't agree. I guess
You're
just,
wrong though. This isn't a
Okay,
agree or disagree.
So it's up to you.
You're wrong.
It's up to you. It's up to you. I can either make my case for why I don't think this is the right conversation, why I think it's obfuscating to frame it this way, or we can stay in your frame and I'll continue down your line of questioning. I'm happy to go either way, but I do need to interject and say that I don't think this is right.
I'm trying to point out to you the futility of the initial question, is he a Nazi? The first
I know.
qualifier we're getting to Nazi is anti-Semitism, and you've already admitted that who is considered anti-Semitic can be up for discussion. There's a broad range of what is considered anti-Semitic. If there's a broad range of what is
Absolutely.
anti-Semitic, there's probably a broad range of what is a Nazi, so asking the question, is he a Nazi, is by definition, is definitionally an open-ended question. But when I point out that
I don't agree with that.
it logically follows, it's deductively true.
I don't agree with that, and I don't agree with your premise, and I don't agree with your framing. But if you want to keep asking about anti-Semitism, I will answer your questions, and I will be patient, and I will not interrupt. But I do want to interject that I think you're obfuscating by even framing it this way.
Okay, I think it's going to be impossible to move me off of this framing, but if you make a very compelling argument, I can be moved, so go for it.
When I talk about the definitions of these words, I'm talking about your definition.
You don't know what my
definition.
definition is on any of these words.
That's right. Absolutely, I don't. But I know you decently well, and I trust you to formulate a definition of anti-Semitism that I would probably agree with, or that I think has utility. I also trust you to formulate a definition of Nazi, pedophile, murderer, rapist. All these words are words that you use a lot. You run into other people using them, and 99% of the time, when I hear you argue about them, I agree with you. So even if it's not going to be my definition, I'm talking about your definition. So whatever your definition is, I'm fine with you using in this conversation. I don't even need to know what it is, and I'm not even going to ask you what it is.
Okay.
If I said, is Nick Fuentes a Nazi, and you said no, that would mean a lot to me. I would probably ask you why you said that, but I wouldn't start picking apart your definition of Nazi. So the framing of, again, we have an equal sign. We got anti-Semite on one side, and we got Nick Fuentes on the other, and the question is the equal sign deserved?
Yeah.
I'm saying you, in your heart, do you think Nick Fuentes is a Nazi. However you define Nick Fuentes, however you define him being that, is it his secret beliefs? Is it what he does? Is it what he says? Is it his effect on the world? Whatever. Is it his fan base? Whatever the fuck you want it to be, you can do whatever you want with it. And you can define Nazi however you want. But I think, so what I'm saying you have a moral imperative to do is not to agree with me that Nick Fuentes is a Nazi. It's to formulate an opinion of Nick Fuentes, formulate an opinion of Nazi, and then make a decision about how you're going to use these words or if you're not going to use these words. What's concerning to me is that you're using the word Nazi in a serious way, in a playful way. You're saying he is a Nazi and you're saying he isn't a Nazi. And my problem with this is I believe Nick Fuentes' game plan is to make it confusing whether he's a Nazi or not, and I believe that you are introducing the same confusion that unnecessarily
I understand.
by making it into a semantic argument.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything that you've laid out in this argument, I believe, proves my paradigm and how I view the language being used.
Okay.
So, but you are, in my opinion, misrepresenting, not intentionally, but I think you're misrepresenting the strength of the words that you're using. So you say, for instance, is somebody a Nazi? The way that you define this Nazi word, or pedophile, or murderer, or rapist, is done in a tribalistic manner. You're not appealing to an objective definition of Nazi. You're telling me, I trust you, I know you, I think that we'll agree on the definitions roughly for these words. That's the problem, is that when different tribes of people are connecting on the internet, they've tribalistically determined what the definitions of some of these broader words are. If I talk to a lot of people on the right, things like groomer and pedophile are going to be broadly applied across the LGBT group because they also trust each other to have a tribalistic family way of defining these words. So when you ask me, I want you to formulate an opinion of Nick Fuentes, and I want you to formulate an opinion of all of these things to tell me like what you feel about these things. What I'm pushing back on is that that's fine, and if it's in a one-on-one conversation, maybe I'll say it, but in front of an audience, there's all sorts of different tribes butting up against each other with different definitions that are all different. So when you ask me, is somebody a Nazi, you're referring to 27 different things all at once. And I don't want to answer yes to that because I can't commit him to everybody's different definition of the word Nazi. We already had a conversation. We can't even agree on what anti-Semitism is. And you want me to agree on a definition of Nazi that I would hold somebody to publicly?
I don't want you to agree with other people. I want you to agree with yourself. Say your definition, and then that'll be it. And people will know what you meant when you said it, just like you gave the definition of the word pedophile.
That's not true.
Pedophile. You used the word pedophile just now.
If I was to,
wait, let me finish. Now who's interrupting who? You used the word pedophile just now, and you said, here's my definition of pedophile. Other people have different definitions of pedophile. This one is mine. And then you use the word. No ambiguity, no confusion. If there's 27 definitions, you just got rid of 26 of them, and then you're fine using the word. When it comes to the word Nazi and Nick Fuentes, you don't want to do that. And that's all I'm asking you to do, is have your definition, tell us what it is, and then use it.
Our sacred grove is being desecrated.
Okay. That is not true. Everything you just said is not true. You're worried that he is going to play in my definition if I'm not willing to like stake out a moral position on it. If what you just said, I just want you to say if he adheres to your definition of Nazi. But what if I define Nazi in a really strict sense and I say no? You're not going to be happy with that. You're going to have a problem with that, right?
I'm not going to have this problem with it. My problem is that you're obfuscating and creating confusion for Fuentes.
I understand. You've said this 50
and for
million
your own
times.
benefit.
Let me
Well, then don't
repeat
tell
what-
me I'm gonna. Don't then wait.
Okay.
Then when you say you're gonna have a problem with it, like yeah, I might not like it if you say the word Nazi is relegated to only describe people who are dead. We can never use it to describe somebody who's alive because if they were alive, they'd be over 120 and it would be the oldest person on Earth or something. Like yeah, if you're gonna use the word Nazi that strictly, I'm gonna have a problem with the utility of your definition. But that's a different problem than the problem I'm having. Your goal in the conversation is not to make me happy, and that's not what I'm asking you to do. That's an unfair framing. I'm asking you specifically to have a definition of Nazi. Tell us what it is, and then have a definition of Fuentes, and tell us if you think he meets that definition, or if you don't have a definition, just say you don't have a definition. Say, I don't know what a Nazi is and I don't want to use that word, and then stop using it.
Okay,
or
let's
say,
say
I
that
don't know, I have a definition, but I don't know what Nick Fuentes is. But my problem is you won't answer this clearly and consistently and concisely.
Okay, so you just want me to give you my definition of Nazi?
Yes.
And then say, okay. So I think that
Yeah.
my definition of Nazi generally employs, number one, a high level of conspiratorial anti-Semitism, not just actual observations about Jewish people. So claiming that there are some type of like insidious plots can be a big part of that anti-Semitic thing, especially plots against your native race, right? So that's a big form of anti-Semitism. So number one, that's a pretty important qualifier. Number two is usually some sort of outward violence, or at the very least state-sponsored violence against ethnic minorities or other undesirables. So for instance, having like a state-sponsored plan to export or kill certain people of certain ethnic groups or certain people of like LGBT persuasions or other types of quote-unquote undesirables, right?
Okay,
And
can
then
I ask a clarifying question?
go ahead.
Does wanting state-sponsored violence count, or you're saying you have to actually act in state-sponsored violence?
No, it'd be the desire for it would make you
Okay.
right.
Okay.
And then thirdly is generally Nazis want to build some form of fascist state. So meaning they don't care about fucking democracy, they don't give a fuck about fucking Congress or any shit like that. Like they want a single party, populist ruler, authoritarian, possibly totalitarian, vertical control of society. That's usually what I think of when I'm thinking of like neo-Nazi or Nazi. Those are the things that I'm thinking of. Insofar as that goes, Fuentes' outward positions are not there on, I don't think, on any of those three topics. Maybe a little bit on the third one, but on the first two, that is not his outward positions. So if you were to ask me, is America First a neo-Nazi movement or a Nazi movement? Probably not. I don't think so. Now, are there neo-Nazis in that movement? Almost certainly so. It's a large movement and it's very far right. And I think a lot of the rhetoric can be kind of amenable to those people. And if you ask me, is Nick Fuentes secretly a neo-Nazi? He could be. But that would be my stated positions on those three things. On Fuentes, on America First as a movement, the people in America First, and inside Nick's mind. So where would
Okay.
you go then from there?
I want to ask you just bullet point by bullet point.
Go.
You don't believe that Fuentes engages in conspiratorial anti-Semitism?
I haven't heard it as part of his stuff recently, but I could be shown clips that would convince me otherwise. Let me give a quick example of the two of these things. So if he says something like, I think that Jewish people all tend to vote or push politics in a certain way where they're kind of like, they want to always support Israel, and they're kind of like fucking always looking out for themselves and shit, and it fucks the rest of us over a little bit. I don't think that that rises to the level of Jewish conspiracy. But if he says something akin to like what Lauren Southern used to say with The Great Replacement, where he's like, I think there's a plan where these people are intentionally trying to eradicate white people, then that rises to a level of like Jewish conspiracy.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
based on what you know of
Sure.
him,
Based on
what
his
you've
recent
heard him say-
rhetoric,
based on what
no.
you, but based on what you have already heard him say.
Yeah. Based of this, what I've heard recently, but this is something that I could be moved on. Somebody could send me a clip and go, he could say something like, oh yeah,
Sure.
Jewish people, I think they're actually really trying to fuck over white people.
But
And
you're,
you're like, oh yeah,
but
yeah,
if,
yeah.
okay, so are you saying I don't know, or are you saying, so like if somebody asked you about me, they said, do you think that Max engages in anti-Semitic conspiratorial thinking?
No,
Right?
absolutely. I don't think so. I've
Anti-Semitic
never heard you even flirt with the ideas before.
Okay, so at somewhere between me and Nick, or Lauren, us flip switches, or switch flips, and then you say, okay, now I think you're maybe blah blah. So, are you saying you don't know? Are you saying probably, probably not, yes or no?
He's never brought it up anywhere in a convo with me or alluded to it in a debate that I've seen him have, and I haven't been presented with content. So, but obviously his ideology lends itself towards those types of beliefs. So it's possible, but I wouldn't accuse him of having those beliefs because I haven't heard them. I haven't had them presented to me. I've had a lot of people
Okay.
email me about shit that he says and things. Yeah.
Are you not willing to give a one-word answer?
No, not on this. No. And I think asking for one is bad faith. I would make that accusation. Because
I'm not-
clearly
think
it's,
it-
I don't
no,
care.
I think it would be
I'm-
bad. I think it would be bad faith for me to attack you for not giving one.
Okay.
But I want one, and if you don't want to give it, that's fine.
Okay, what is your one word question?
I guess the choices I would give you are: the question is, does Nick Fuentes engage in anti-Semitic conspiracies? or traffic in them.
Yeah, I'd
even
say
then.
no, but it would be based on what I've seen so far. My mind could be changed to that. Somebody can send me a clip in it, but as of what I've seen so far, no.
Okay. And then what was the second criteria for being a Nazi? It wasn't fascism, or wasn't dictatorship. It was.
It's usually calling for like
violence
violent pogroms and shit like that, and like trying to like
Yeah.
put people in camps of like undesirables and ethnic people. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that Nick Fuentes wants to do that?
I haven't seen it. I haven't heard or seen that, and it seems like he speaks to the contrary of that a lot.
Will you give a one-word answer?
The answer would be no. I don't think he engages in that. No.
Okay, so no conspiracy, no anti-Semitic conspiracy, no desire for violence against minorities.
Yes. No, as in yes, as in no. Yeah.
Right, got it. Okay. And the third one is fascism.
Fascism, I'm not as sure because he says weird shit about how he wants like a Christian monarchy. I don't know what the fuck he means by that, if he's actually sincere on that. I know that his group, he tries to get people to engage with the political system. So like he went up and supported Laura Loomer and shit. He might be illiberal, he might be anti-democratic though. I don't know if he would like lean full into fascism. It seems like he could or would, but I don't hear him talk about forms of government much. It feels like he's mostly concerned with getting his people to engage in the current political system. But he could easily be a fascist, or that's what like his end goal would be. I'm just not sure. I haven't. I don't talk to him about like what his ideal style of government is. And when it comes up, he says Christian monarchy. I don't know what the fuck that means.
Okay, so what's your one-word answer? If you want to give one.
I would say on that one, probably maybe or yes.
Okay. Will you pick one or no?
Is he a
Or is mi-
fascist?
Yeah.
I am the iron hand of justice.
I think he would be. I'll say yes on that one. I'll give you that one.
Okay, so he's a fascist, but you don't think he meets the other two criteria.
Yeah.
Have you read
I'm saying
Rose
yes to
Wrist's-
fascist because he feels very anti-democratic to me. Yeah. So okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Understood.
Have you read Rose Wrist's quote list?
Not yet. I never read quote lists from anybody for anything. But if somebody wants to give me more substantive stuff, like I'll go through it. But
I am the
I'm not
iron
usually
hand
interested in like here's 50 quotes over the past 6 years.
Okay. A cross-examining question. If your answer to two of the criteria are no, why did you say he's basically a Nazi? I think the time before last we talked and on Twitter.
I already told you on Twitter for the purposes of fighting with Lance, because it's funny from the tweet, that if Lance believes that he's truly a Nazi, why is the one joke he would pick out the thing that didn't really have anything to do with Jews? That was stupid. And then I would have to know the context of the other conversation where he was like basically a Nazi.
Okay, so your general stance, it sounds like now, is you're saying he just doesn't meet the criteria for Nazi.
To truly be considered like a Nazi or Nazi?
By you, to be considered, not truly, but by you.
I don't think so. Correct.
Okay.
Understood.
Do you see my concern about the vagueness introduced by using that words in different contexts and different ways to describe him? If he, I mean, even if he's just a fascist, creating a is he or isn't he narrative, do you see how that, I mean, do you see how that helps Trump in a way, where then all the people...
No,
who
I see how you think it does, but I disagree with all of that. I think that all of these words are fucked, regardless of my input.
Regardless of your input, do you see how a is he or isn't he a white supremacist narrative helped Trump?
Sure, I can, but I think people calling him a white supremacist helps Trump. I would accuse them more than any of the is he or isn't he people.
No. I'm not saying the is he or isn't he people. I'm saying just the whole narrative around him being confusion around is he a white supremacist. I don't think Trump is a white supremacist, but I think the idea, progressives clinging to the idea that he is actually helps him, because it really sucks the air out of any criticism of him.
What? Say that again?
Progressives clinging to the idea that Trump is a white supremacist helps him, because there just isn't a lot of evidence that he is, and he doesn't seem like one.
Okay.
Do you see how that confusion around that helps him?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see, from my perspective, that if Fuentes, even if he's just a fascist, any confusion around whether he is a Nazi and specifically joking or ironic confusion, do you see how that helps him discredit his critics?
Yeah, it could. Yeah.
Okay.
I am the Iron Hand
So,
of justice. Research.
Yeah, so I feel like if you're saying he's basically a Nazi, if you're jokingly calling him a Nazi, but then if you're saying you don't think he meets the criteria for Nazi, but he meets.
He's close enough for me to joke about it. Like I might joke about Hassan being a tanky, but Hassan is absolutely not a
I am
tanky
the
in any
Iron
like
Hand.
strict definition of the word. Neither is Vosh, but I might joke about it sometimes.
Yeah, so I'm concerned about you joking about it with him because
Understood.
you're saying
Let
he
the hunt
meets the worst criteria. The worst part about Nazis is that they're fascists.
I disagree.
It's like if somebody I mean, if somebody wants to kill you, but they're gonna vote on it, then like that's not that big of a problem. Somebody engages in conspiracy.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean that's not
thinking.
that big a problem? We were a democracy with slavery for like 100 years. Over 100 years. How do you mean that's not that big of a problem? The Democratic Party of the United States didn't keep it from doing atrocities.
Yeah, it's a big problem, but I don't think it's as big of a problem. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Okay. I think that engaging in anti-Semitic conspiratorial thinking. I'm saying if somebody.
What I'm saying is that like there can be like
somebody
good.
somebody just wanting to kill you, or wanting the government to kill you. Yes, it's a problem if enough people are unified in their beliefs about that, and then they start voting on it, like something like slavery happens. Yeah, that's bad. But most people in the United States have other people they want the government to kill. I think we're just kind of a bloodthirsty nation, and democracy prevents us from doing terrible, terrible things to each other. So that's what I mean when I say that. I'm not trying to downplay the incidence of racial violence in democratic nations. I'm saying that right now, when I think of, well, what's stopping genocide from happening now, democracy is like the first thing that comes to mind. So I'm not, if I hear somebody has conspiratorial thoughts about Jews or any other race, like, yeah, that's concerning or upsetting, but like a lot of fucking people do. I just don't care that much about that part. I care about it only because of what that person would do if they came to power. The only reason I care about that is if that person wants to take over the government, which I already know Fuentes does because he fucking tried to do it. He literally tried to overthrow the government, and you're here saying like he might be.
Stop making the emotional
you're
appeals. Wait, stop making the emotional appeals. Super cringe. Don't fucking do that to me. That's because then I'm gonna start crying.
The age of the Giga Chad is over, bitch. I will make emotional appeals. This is an emotional topic for me. I care about my country and I love my country. When somebody tries to overthrow the government, I get upset about it. And I wasn't making an emotional appeal, I was making a logical appeal. He literally tried to overthrow the government, which you agreed with the last time we talked. And you're saying he's a fascist in a way where you're like, I'll bite the bullet and say he's probably a fascist.
Okay, and I would say that one of the huge contributing factors for how we ever got to that point was people's inability to engage with the other side, and one of those inabilities is the obsession with using words like Nazi, fascist, racist.
It's my fault that Nick Fuentes tried to overthrow the government.
Partially, yes.
Okay.
And that's the thing that I'm trying to get away from, because I can do
Okay,
every
that's
single
fine, but
part
do
of
you
my
see-
job.
I-
I'm gonna keep talking because you just talked for 20 fucking minutes, okay? I can do every single part of my job that I need to do as effectively as possible without ever calling somebody a Nazi or a racist or whatever the fuck. I don't need to use any of those words to attack all the ideas, to give people an accurate assessment of what other people believe, and to discourage people from following certain bad ideologies. And I would say that by using any of those words, I'm putting myself at a disadvantage, because just like in a movie, when you use a real life song inside the movie, there might be thoughts or feelings that a listener or viewer has that I have completely lost control over by bringing in that word. So I avoid doing that completely. I only attack the ideas. I only go up to people on the merit of things. I avoid all of the extra baggage of all the extra bullshit. I don't lose anybody because I'm just throwing around words that may not be accurate depending on how they define them. And I can do all of that perfectly. When people like you come in and try to say, you need to call somebody a Nazi, you need to call somebody a fascist, you are contributing to the further divide of these people going, no, he's calling it that, I'm not that, I'm leaving. So you and your types of people that are insistent on using these words as weapons are the ones that are making all of the discourse worse, and you're making it harder for me to do what I do. You're not contributing anything positive to the discourse by insisting that I call somebody a Nazi. If they're a Nazi and he has Nazi beliefs, then I will call out the Nazi beliefs like I have on
Wait a
panels,
second.
and people
Don't
will have those
strawman
Nazi
me. Don't
beliefs,
strawman
and then
me.
we'll move on from there. That's how I
Wait,
prefer to
don't-
operate, and that's how I've been operating, and it's been working pretty well so far.
Did I insist that you call him a Nazi?
It seems like you insist that I have some solid, rigid definition for it that I maintain through every single context, and I strictly adhere to it in every context.
Is that the same as insisting that you call him a Nazi?
Well, I don't know. I said that I wouldn't call him a Nazi, and it seemed like that upset you, and now you're trying to give me all the reasons why I should call him a Nazi.
No, I never said you should call him a Nazi.
Then what's the problem if I don't want to call him a Nazi? Then what are we even fighting about?
Well, right now we're fighting because you just said I'm insisting that you call him a Nazi, and I want you
You know
to
I'm not
admit
asking
that
about this particular statement. Let's back up on the macro level. What are we arguing about then? If you're okay with me not calling him a Nazi, what is this conversation about?
I want you to admit that I've never told you that I insist you call him a Nazi. I've never actually said that, right?
You might not have said that, but what you said is that by me not calling him a Nazi, I'm providing cover for him to become potentially the new neo-Nazi dictator in the United States, which I assume is
I
bad.
haven't said that either. I haven't said that either.
Hold on.
I will say, I think you have my thesis written down, right? By being inconsistent.
Hold on, wait. I'm pulling my audio. I'm curious on this one. Did Mr. Girl say that
Wait, you
my
can't pull your audience. You just
refusal
told them something.
to
You're gonna
use
tell
the
them
word-
something.
Okay,
Wait,
well,
wait,
ask. You
wait,
said
wait.
it, so
No,
they'll
no.
remember. Did Mr. Girl say that my refusal to use the word Nazi
no,
provides
you
cover
control what the
for
audience
Nick
thinks, Steven.
and allows
You
him
can-
to become a
Dude.
fascist dictator?
You wrote down my thesis. Just fucking read it.
Which one? Where?
I don't know. I can't see your screen, but I assume.
For the conversation today, it's whether or not my community has 100% over control over a word or whatever.
That's what something you said I said that I didn't say, and then I accused you of gaslighting when you did that. So no, I didn't say that either.
Wait,
I've
so
never
okay.
said you have 100%. Wait, let me be clear. I have at no point ever said you should call him a Nazi if you don't think he's a Nazi. I'm saying I want you to formulate an opinion of Fuentes and formulate a definition of the word Nazi, and then I want you to decide, which you've agreed to do, and you already just did, so I don't know why you're still saying that I'm insisting you call him a Nazi. I want you to decide whether you think he's a Nazi or not, and then I want you to give an answer to that question, which you did. I've
Okay,
never
then-
told you you should
so
call
now
him a
that I've
Nazi.
given the
You shouldn't
answer-
call somebody a Nazi if you don't
Okay,
think